بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. So inshallah in today's class we're going to pick up right where we left off, which is to begin with verse 135 and go all the way to the end of the section, which is 152, which is to continue the discussion of the calculation that we began. Now, in some books, not in the book that I've been teaching, but in some books, there's a new section that starts in line 137, which is called Babu Siham, which is the section of the portions. And I actually think in this case, I wish I had looked ahead before I recorded the last class. This is pretty much what we're going to talk about, which is what happens. We want to answer the following question: what happens when we list the people that are supposed to inherit, and then we list the fraction? Okay, we know that each person gets their fraction because we've studied that. Then we know that there's a lowest common whole denomination which those fractions are based. Now what happens if we actually do the case and we realize that there is an unequal distribution, or that some of the shares have been taken before other people? How do you then compensate for that? That's what this section is supposed to, and this is where it kind of gets, unfortunately, a little complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually read you all of the lines that we're going to discover with a quick translation, and then we're going to basically ditch the text, and I have another book in front of me in which we have examples, and the examples of inheritance law, they kind of look like these charts, and I'm just going to write it in English with my pen on a notepad for you, and I think this might be an easier way by going through the examples. So we'll go through the text because that's my way, it's very text-based. There is some vocabulary in the text that you need to know because if you go on and study other things in inheritance law, you need to know those vocabulary. So we'll do that. That probably take the first clip or so. But then I think the real way is just to give you the examples, to show you what happens if, as I said, you can't evenly distribute, 3 over, 7. So then there's a problem. How do you then compensate for that? So we're going to find a way of multiplying different numbers in the inheritance chart to give us a larger share base upon which then we can make an equitable distribution. And that's what Babu Siham, the section of portions, is about. And inshallah we'll begin this in the next clip inshallah. All right, so as I mentioned, this will be just a little bit different than the other lectures about this text because I went through this when I was preparing, and I think that the line by line and the commentary, it's a little, for the Western mind, at least for my mind, it was not straightforward. And I found it much easier, as I said in the introductory clip, just to learn by the examples. But because I am a text-based person, and this is a text-based course and all of that, it is important that we go through the text. So I want to, give you the lines in the translation. Maybe I'll do some light commentary. You're going to see me in this clip shifting through a lot of papers, and I'm sorry, it's just, I have a small desk area, but that's what we have to work with. Okay, so we're going to begin with line 135. قال المصنف رحمه الله ونفعنا بعلومه في الدارين آمين. Arabic and English, Arabic and English. وإن تكن من أصلها تصح فترك طويل الحساب ربح. And if you have verified the lowest common denomination, then leave a lengthened computation to be successful. So as you will say, the computations can keep going. Well, there's no point of a long computation if a short computation works. That's what he's saying. 136 فاعطي كل سهمه من أصلها مكملا أو عائلا من أولها. Give then to each person their share from the denomination, because then we have the common number, so how many shares from that person gets. Complete or increase the denomination if the shares are exhausted. Complete, afwan, or increased the shares. Let me say that again. Complete or increase the denomination if the shares are exhausted. That's the whole section that we're about to take. And that's why in some books, starting in line 37 to the end of the section, line 152, it's considered a different bab. And I think that that's probably accurate. I think it is a different bab called Babu Siham, or the section of proportions. So what happens if you've exhausted, or if you have an unequal distribution, or if you've exhausted the shares? Line 137. وإن ترى السهام ليست تنقسم على ذوي الميراث فاتبع ما رسم. And if you see that the shares cannot be distributed to those who inherit, then follow what is prescribed, i.e. what he's about to explain. 138. واطلب طريق الاختصار في العمل بالوفق واضرب يجانبك الزلل, and seek the way of efficiency in the work by multiplication and proportion. This will remove error from you. 139. واردد إلى الوفق الذي يوافق واضربه في الأصل فأنت حاذق, and restore to the whole quantity what agrees with it, and multiply it by the denomination and be vigilant. I mean, again, all of this is we're going to explain, but he's basically saying that we're going to increase the lowest common denomination. We're going to increase that number by multiplying it either by the number of people that will inherit, which is kind of a simple mathematical thing, or we multiply the number of people that will inherit with each other and then multiply the lowest common denomination to get a much larger number so that we can have the equitable distribution. 140. إن كان جنسا واحدا أو أكثر فاتبع سبيل الحق واطرح المرى. Whether there be one denomination or more, remember well and dismiss from the doubt and difficulty. Meaning that if there are several people inheriting, there might be a problem with only one category, or there might be a problem with multiple categories. I will give you both of those examples. 141. Like if somebody receives a half, well, half is pretty easy. It's usually there's no kasr, there's no indivisible issue with that. But the other people that might receive a 6 and a 4th in that same inheritance equation, they might have a problem. So the half person is not a problem. What we have to focus on is the other categories. That's what he means. 141. وإن ترى الكسر على الأجناس فإنها في الحكم عند الناس. And if you see equity in several kinds, as I just mentioned, several kinds instead of one kind, then they, by the rule amongst men, تحصر في أربعة أقسام يعرفها الماهر في الأحكام. They are numerically ranged in 4 terms. The skillful accountant will know them by the rules. And these are the four terms that you need to know, which is a tamathul, which means that the numbers are symmetrical. They're the same numbers, 5 and 5, 3 and 3. Or there is tadakhul, sometimes it's called tanasub, meaning that there's overlapping, meaning the least number is part of the bigger number. For example, 2 and 4, so 2 is part of 4. That's called tadakhul or tabayun, tanasub. And then we have tawafuq. Sorry, let me just get my paper out here. Then we have tawafuq, which is compatibility, which means there's a partial ratio between the two numbers, like 4 and 8. And then there is tabayun, which is inequity, and the numbers are just simply different, like 4 and 5. Those are when I said in the introductory clip about the vocabulary, those are the vocabulary. So he says in line 142, he says that the categories, there are 4 of them. So in line 144, مماثل, or the tamathul, مماثل من بعده مناسب وبعده موافق مصاحب. The symmetrical term, meaning tamathul, as I translated, من بعده مناسب, then after it is proportionality, is that they are proportional or overlapping. Let me actually translate it as overlapping to be consistent with my nomenclature. And then after that, the compatible, accompanying, al-muwafiq. And then line 144, وَالرَّابِعُ الْمُبَايِنُ الْمُخَالِفُ يُنْبِيكَ عَنْ تَفْصِيلِهِنَّ الْعَارِفُ. And the 4th is the unequal. At-tabayun means that the numbers are just completely unequal, which unfortunately you find a lot in the inheritance situations. The intelligent man will inform thee of their distinctions. Sorry, I lost my line. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, sorry, we're in Bab Siham. Okay, line 145. فخذ من المماثلين واحدة وخذ من المناسبين زائدة. Take from the symmetrical one 1. So if it's 5 and 5, then you just have to take 5. It's just one of them, that's what he means. And take from the overlapping the rest, the larger number. So when we said, for example, 2 or 4 are overlapping, we're going to take 4 because it's a larger number. 146. وَاضْرِبْ جَمِيعَ الْوَفْقِ فِي الْمُوَافِقِ وَاسْلُكْ بِذَاكَ أَنْهُجَ الطَّرَائِقِ, and multiply the whole by the compatible and pursue by the plainest ways. Al-wafq is kind of the chart that we have that we're dealing with. So you're going to take the larger number and multiply it across the chart. Line 147, those are the examples I'm going to show you. Line 147. وَخُذْ جَمِيعَ الْعَدَدِ الْمُبَايِّنِ, and take the entire number of unequals. وَاضْرِبْهُ فِي الثَّانِي وَلَا تُدَاهِنْ, and multiply them by the second term and be not deceived. 148. فَذَاكَ جُزْءُ السَّهْمِ فَاحْفَظْنَهُ وَاحْذَرْ هُدِيتَ أَن تَزِيغَ عَنْهُ. This is the section of portions, Babu Siham, so memorize it and be cautious to be guided from misguidance, or to avoid misguidance would be better. 149. وَاضْرِبْهُ فِي الْأَصْلِ الَّذِي تَأَصَّلَ وَاحْصِ مَا انضَمَّ وَمَا تَحَصَّلَ, and multiply it by the denominator which you have calculated, and compute what is the sum and what it amounts to. And on line 150, وَاقْسِمْهُ فِي الْقَسْمُ إِذًا صَحِيحُ يَعْرِفُهُ الْأَعْجَمُ وَالْفَصِيحُ, and divide it, and if the division be just, the illiterate and the eloquent man will equally know it, because then you just end up having whole numbers and you can easily determine. 151. فَهَذِهِ مِنَ الْحِسَابِ جُمَلُ يَأْتِي عَلَى مِثَالِهِنَّ الْعَمَلُ, and this is the whole of the computation. The work thus proceeds in similar cases. مِنْ غَيْرِ تَطْوِيلٍ وَلَا احْتِسَافِ فَاقْنَعْ بِمَا بُيِّنَ فَهُوَ كَافِي, without prolixity or digression, be satisfied then with what it contains, for it is sufficient. Okay, so as I said, I just wanted to go through it, so we go through it. But what we're going to do, I think, for the next clips is just ditch the text. And I think the easiest thing is just for me to give you the examples, and then for me to draw the examples for you just using my pen on the chart. And I just have sort of a blank piece of paper in front of me, and I'll give you some of those examples. And I believe that inshallah it will be simply easier to do that than to go back through the text, because the text in the translation is a little archaic. So we'll pick it up in the next discussion clip, inshallah. Okay, before we do the examples, I want to go over just a couple of things for you guys. The first thing is to go over the nomenclature that we talked about. The first thing is that we can have symmetrical numbers, al-mumathal, which means the same number. It's like 5 and 5, 3 and 3, 2 and 2. So, when there is a discrepancy in the inheritance situation, and all of the numbers are symmetrical, then the number that we are going to use in the charts is the same number, which actually then means that there's no discrepancy, because it's the same number, it's equally divisible with itself. The second number, or the second situation, is a overlapping, at-tadakhul, or in some of the later books of inheritance laws called al-munasab. The munasab, in munasab, meaning that the least number, the smaller number is part of the larger number. When this is the case and there's a discrepancy, we are going to use the larger number to solve the problem. And then we have the issue of unequal amounts, at-tabayun. This is where we're going to multiply the numbers by one another. So if you have 3 and you have 4, well, they're unequal, but 4 times 3 is 12. So then we're going to use 12, and then 12 can be divisible by 3 and divisible by 4, and then it's just a mathematical thing. And then if they are compatible, tawafuq, then we are going to take the smallest divisible portion of the numbers to multiply it. That's kind of the examples that we are going to follow moving forward. So I got another book, and this is just a modern book. And this, by the way, is a good example of research, because I know that sometimes we have to talk about research in our work together, is that it's important that you have multiple books. So when I wanted to teach this class, I actually went to the bookstore and I got, I think, 5. I got 5 little books that are basically a commentary on the, or 3 commentaries on the Rahabiyya, the one that I'm teaching from, 4 commentaries, the one I'm teaching from, 3 other smaller ones, and then I got a modern, like basically textbook on Ilm al-Mawarith. Sometimes when you read the classical books like Sharh al-Mardini, which is the one that I usually prepare for, some of the, especially for math, I didn't study math in Arabic, I studied math in English. So when I read mathematical terms in Arabic, I get confused. I need usually either a direct translation or at least a modern book that explains it. And in this case, that's what I found. I found a modern book that said, oh, that's what he means. Okay, now I got it. So, you know, just a kind of a point. All right. Now, let us give us an example. I have 5 examples. So let's go for the first example. The first example, and then in this you'll also learn how you write out the things. We have a woman has died and she's left a husband, 2 sons, 2 daughters. And I apologize in advance for my handwriting. So, a husband, 2 sons, 2 daughters. Now, we know that the husband is going to get 1/4. And that we know that the sons and the daughter are going to get the rest because they are an asaba, or the universal inheritors, which is usually just listed by the harf ayn. So the husband gets 1/4, and then the rest of what's left, the children are going to get what's left, knowing that the son is going to get double the portion of the daughter. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to say, based on the proportions that we know in Islamic law, the fractions, 1/4 and then the rest, we know that the total amount, the lowest denomination is going to be that the tarika, the pot that is left, is going to be out of the number 4. Now, we know that 1/4 of 4 is 1, which means that the siblings together take 3. So it would look like something like that. If the whole estate is going to be out of 4 portions, then we know that the husband getting 1/4 gets 1 out of 4, and then these children will get 3. These children will get 3 out of the 4. Now the problem is that we have 4 children, and we have an unequal number of the 4 children and then 3. So how is that going to be divisible? That's sort of when we need to uptick the number 4 that's up here. Now, in this case, we have no problem with the husband 1/4 from 4, because 1/4 from 4 is 1 portion. So we don't have a problem. We only have a problem with the one category, which is the children. Now, the children, while the husband is 1, the children are 6. So even though the husband is 1 person, the children are 6, because the boys get twice the girls. So the boys are 2 times 2, meaning they get 4, and then the girls are 2 because they get half the portion of the boy. They're 6. So there's a total of 6 shares that need to be allocated to the children. Now, between the number of people, the number of shares that need to be distributed, which in this case are 6. Now we know why we got 6, because the boys get double the girls. And between the portion number 3 here, what's the relationship between 3 and 6? Well, the lowest divisible, the lowest multiple of 3 and 6 is going to be, sorry, not no, I misspoke. 1 second, let me just look at the commentary. Sorry, we're going to divide the 6 portions by the 3. So 6 divided by 3 is going to be 2. So therefore, we're going to go up to the 4. We're going to go up to the 4 and multiply it by 2. So 4 times 2 is going to be, now we have a total of 8. So the husband is going to get 2 of those 8s. The boys are going to get 4. And the girls are going to get 2. So the husband gets 2. And then the boys get 4, double that of the girls 2. So 2 plus 4 plus 2 is 8. So now we had to increase the pot by that multiple of 2 because we were able to divide the 6 by the 3, as we showed, to yield the number 2. Okay, so this is an example in which we have one category in the inheritance example that's problematic, and we were able to find a number that works. Now, in the next example, we're going to look at an example in which we don't find a common number easily between the people that need to inherit. So I'm going to actually, not to confuse you, I will get a brand new piece of paper and I will start this from afresh. A man has died and left a wife, a son, and 2 children. A wife, a son, and two daughters. Sorry, a wife, a son, and 2 daughters. And we'll pick this up in the next clip, inshallah. Okay, so in this second example, we're saying that a man has died and left a wife, a son, and 2 daughters. Now, we know that the wife, because of the presence of the children, is going to get 1/8. And then the rest goes to the sons and the daughters. So we're going to put the letter Ain by them. And we're going to say that there are going to be 4 because the son takes 2 portions by himself, and then there's 2 daughters, they get 1 each, so it's like 2 and 2 is 4. So the Ain, because the son and daughter will take, they are the Asaba, the universal inheritors, and then these combined, the son gets double the portion, so that's 2 here, 2 daughters, 1 each, so 2 plus 2 is 4, so there's 4. The original mathematical kind of breakdown of this issue is that it's out of 8. So if it's out of 8, then the spouse is going to get 1, right? The wife will get 1, and then there's 7 left for the 4 portions of the children. But there's a discrepancy between 4 and 7. They're unequal, and there's no common number between them. So in this case, we are going to take the number of shares that we need, which is 4, because the son gets 2 and there's 2 for the daughters. So 2 plus 2 we said is 4. And we're going to multiply the 8 on the top by 4. So we're going to increase 8 by 4. And then that's going to yield us 32. like this. 8 times 4 is 32. So now the whole pot is 32. The wife gets 1/8 of that, which is 4 shares. The son gets double the shares, so he gets 14. And then there's 14 left for each total for the two daughters, meaning they each get 7. So 14 plus 14 is going to be 28, plus the 4 will give us that 32. Okay, so another example in which there is the category of the children was only one category was yielding a problem, but it yielded in equal numbers, so that's how we solve the unequal numbers. Okay, now another example, I hope I have time for all of these inshallah, is if there is more than one problem area. So a person dies and he leaves a grandmother, 2 wives, so a man who's died, a son, and a daughter. We know that the grandmother is going to get 1/6. Each wife will get 2 times 1/8. The son and the daughter are going to be an asaba with an ayn, and there's going to be 3 shares of that because there's a daughter, the son gets 2 shares, the daughter gets 1 share, and then the original mathematical computation is it is out of 24. I'm just trying to do a lot. So here are the people that are left. These are the fractions that they get, and then we said that the total pot is mathematically because of the fractions is out of 24. So therefore, the grandmother would get 4, 1/6 of 24, and then the portion of the wife is 3, the wives is 3, but you can't divide 3 equally over 2, you'll get 1.5. That's a problem. And then the siblings, the son and daughter, they get 17, which is also not divisible. So we have a problem in 2 categories, which is the 2 wives and the siblings. Now, in this case, we're going to count all of the people that are going to inherit. The grandmother, the 2 wives, the son that gets 2 portions, and then the daughter that's 6. So we're going to multiply 24 by 6 on the top. Now the pot is out of 144, like this. It's out of 144 now. Now we're going to go back and do the math. The grandmother is going to get 24 portions. The wives will get 18. The boy will get 68. The girl will get 24. Like that. This is math. It's nothing else than that. Okay. Now we have a problem with 3 people. A man leaves 4 wives, 3 girls, 3 daughters, and 2 full sisters. I'll just put 2 sisters. The wives get 4, there are 4 of them, but they each get 1/8. The 3 daughters are going to get 3 portions. Each one, the 3 of them need to split the 2/3. And the rest is going to be the sisters. We'll put an ayn there, and there's 2 of those sisters. So the original pot would be 24 based on the calculations. It would look something like that. Right? The wives get 1, there's 1/8 for each wife. The daughters get 2/3. So 2/3 for 3 of them, and then the rest go to the full sister. So the portion based on that for the wives is 3 out of 24. The daughters get 16 out of 24. And then the sisters get 5 out of 24. So 3, 16, and 5. Now obviously we have, those are not equally divisible in this case. So what is the ratio or the number that we can divide by 4, 3, and 2? It's going to be 12. So we're going to take 24 on the top, multiply that by 12 to get us 288, like this. So multiply that by 12 to get 288. So now the whole pot is 288. So now the wives are going to get 36 shares, and you can divide that over the 4 wives. And then the daughters are going to get a total of 192 shares, which is divisible by 3. And then the rest, which is 60, are for the sisters. Like that. So that's what this section is about. I'm not going to, there's one more example, but I think that these examples suffice. So let me just close the book so we can wrap up this lecture. So, the first thing we need to learn about inheritance law is we need to learn the fractions. Each person gets what fractions. That's from the text of the Quran and Sunnah. And there's a couple of issues in which there is ijtihad. Then the second thing we need to learn is we need to learn who blocks who and who universally inherits who. That's the second layer of discussion. So now when we have somebody who's passed away and we have people that are left, we know each person gets what fraction and which person blocks whom. Then the calculation has to happen. That's kind of where the Matn of Abi Shuja ended, and where kind of this text and other texts pick up, is how we have to do the math. So then we learn that you have to have the lowest common denomination, which is the number that we're putting up here at the top, originally, like in this case, 8. And we just memorize that those fractions, that there are some of them that stay the same and there are some of them that can expand. Now we've added one more layer of complexity, which is the last layer of complexity, thank God, which is that sometimes, or many times, when you come to do the mathematical distribution, it's not equal. Either that there are unequal numbers, or you have used up some of the fractions before some of the people that are supposed to inherit. In that case, what do? That's when we do this section. That's when this section kicks in, which is to say that we have to multiply if they're irregular by either a common ratio, or we have to multiply them together, or as the examples that we gave in the beginning. And those are some of the examples that I showed you. Now, the way that I drew them, that's basically how, when you come to solve an inheritance problem, how you're going to solve them. If you get an advanced book, like this is how all of the examples are given in the book. These are in Arabic. That's how these charts are. And sometimes you go out several steps to get the pot to be big enough so that you can figure out how to easily distribute it. Okay, the rest of the text, alhamdulillah, is much easier for the last 2 lectures. So we'll put a pin in it here. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina mawlana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah, in today's lecture, we were able to finish the section of calculation and the section of portions, beginning with line, just tell you what line we read, 135 all the way to 152. And this was a new section in which we learned that when there is when you have exhausted the inheritance shares, or you have unequal numbers that cannot be evenly distributed because the shares got to be whole shares to the people that are going to inherit, then you have to look at the numbers. If the numbers are unequal, sometimes you have to multiply them together, find the lowest common divisible part or portion, multiply by that to increase the pot of inheritance, and then you can easily take the shares out. And that is basically how you solve the inheritance problem. And I used, just the simple graphs to show you guys how you do that, which is kind of how all inheritance laws discussions take place. We looked at when there is a problem with only one category, or there's a problem with multiple categories. We looked at when the numbers are equally divisible with one another, or they're completely unequal. Those are kind of the combinations of the problems that we saw. This is how you actually do the inheritance shares. Now, when you have the pot and these numbers, then you have to apply those numbers to like the real world situation. So somebody left $10,000, in the pot. Well, you're going to know that, well, based on your calculation, that pot is equal to how many portions, and you have to divide it out. That math might be unequal, cents and things like that, but it's an equal distribution of the inheritance. And because comes from the Quran and the Sunnah, we need to make sure that we do justice to the topic. This is probably the most complicated part, not probably, this is the most complicated part of inheritance law. There are some ijtihadi issues, that's not true, but that's a super advanced. We're not going to get into any of that. But the rest of the text for the next 2 lectures is going to be pretty straightforward. We're just going to talk about some, things that are left on the table post-death and things like that. So it should be pretty straightforward. This was, like I said, the most complicated stuff for our unit. And it just takes practice and patience, but if you go through it multiple times, you'll get it, and inshallah it'll become easy after that. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Mawlana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.